Welcome to another Founding Voices podcast, a series of conversations with the humans who showed up before there was a map. I'm Perry, the founder of the Octopus movement, and I believe nonlinear thinking is not just a way of creating opportunities, it's a way of being in the world. Each week, I speak with three founding members of our global human mycelium to explore who they are, why they think differently, and how they're shaping a future that cannot be built in straight lines. Okay, normally I say let's meet today's guests, but I will say it differently. Let's love today's guests. Um, on today's Voices podcast, I'm honored to speak with Victor Acquista, um, a physician. Physician, it's a difficult word for me to pronounce, Victor. A physician turned international actor, speaker, and conscious explorer whose work spans fiction, nonfiction, and human transformation. Hmm. Victor writes with the purpose he calls writing to raise consciousness, using story, health, wisdom, and deep reflection to invite others into expand awareness of who we are and what we can become. His multi award winning books, workshops, and talks explore what it means to live well, love fully, and evolve personally and collectively, blending medicine, philosophy, myth, and social insight with imagination and heart. Victor's journey from healthcare and medical leadership into the world of storytelling and consciousness studies make him uniquely equipped to help us to think about life, health, meaning, and transformation, not as abstract concepts, but lived experiences worth pursuing with curiosity and courage. Here we
Wow.
go, Victor. This
Wow.
all means, this all means Victor's very conscious of his love.
Yes, yes. And I love you, Perry, and I thank you for giving me this opportunity for us to be with one another in shared presence. Um, and
I remember, can I quickly say
yeah,
this, Victor?
sure.
I remember the first time we spoke on Zoom, meeting a lot of people on Zoom, and we met the first time. I think Carrie introduced us, I'm not sure. And you just said, I love you. But um, it's an interesting topic that we will explore for the next 30 minutes if it's up to me. I love you too, Victor. And it's so interesting to connect with a complete stranger and you have a feeling of true connection and deep understanding without understanding. And and that's so cool. I love that in
Mm.
connecting with people. But before we dive into that, I would love to ask you my number one question that I always ask. Victor, what is the octopus in you? Especially as a doctor, I'm very curious what you're gonna say.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So I will tell you why I'm not like an octopus at all, and I'll tell you why I'm very much like an octopus. For one thing, and I don't know how many people are aware of this, an octopus has 9 brains, 8 in its tentacles and one central processing unit, but actually 2/3 of its brains are not in its head. It's only a third of its brain power. So it functions as a distributed neural intelligence or neural networked intelligence. It's a distributive model of intelligence. And I don't have 9 brains, but and in that sense, I'm not like an octopus. But um, we often lose sight that we have a cephalic brain. That's the one we commonly think about. That's in our head. We have a
thing
gut
here,
brain.
yeah, yeah.
We have a heart brain. We have somatic intelligence. Our body holds intelligence and so on.
What does
So,
that mean, Victor? In quickly explanation, because you just said that, but what does it mean that we have neurons in our heart, for instance?
well, that our heart is processing energy, information. It is connected to our brain in in many different ways, a field as well as neuronally. Um, but all of these aspects of human intelligence, I think, need to be appreciated to understand that we are um, a networked intelligence within ourselves. And then when you expand that out into the human mycelium and say, well, yes, that's a big distributed network of connected people with talents and abilities and shared vision with the Octopus movement, for instance, then we're talking about a collective intelligence, which you asked me about me. I'm a tiny little node in that network of intelligence. So you mentioned specifically as a physician, and I'm so pleased that you framed that because my particular training in Western medicine is as an internist, an internal medicine physician. We care for the medical problems of adults. And we are trained specifically to be um, experts in breadth rather than depth. So we have knowledge about many different organs and systems and anatomy and physiology and what have you, all in an effort for us to be good diagnosticians.
Mhm.
Now, medical diagnosis requires that you reduce a set of signs and symptoms into a differential diagnosis, which is a list of possibilities, and then distill that into a single correct diagnosis. That's the goal. It's highly reductive, and Western medicine basically is highly reductive, which is the scientific method, which is very linear, very left brain, if you will. Um, Although it's surprisingly not,
I wanted to ask you about that. Yes.
because in the what I call the black box of differential diagnosis is a lot of nonlinear thinking that is more inductive rather than deductive.
Mhm.
Okay, you have inductive thought processes which kind of expand outward, deductive thought processes which kind of bring things to a single point. So let's just use a very simple example. Someone comes and tells me with a chief complaint that they have a sore throat. So I have to consider using inductive reasoning.
Yeah.
What are the possibilities? Well, strep throat, mononucleosis, throat cancer, postnasal drip. So I immediately am generating possibilities, possibilities. And I have to apply some curiosity, say, well, let me ask some questions that help me maybe figure this out a little bit more. So now I'm switching into a more deductive thing. Do you smoke? If you smoke, there's a higher chance that you have throat cancer. Have you been around someone with strep throat? Have you had mononucleosis? So there's this um, process that is actually um, going on in rapid fashion that is impossible to map out because it's parallel processing. It's
Yeah.
parallel processing using two completely different modes of thinking, nonlinear and linear. And then you are able to arrive at a diagnosis, and that sounds very linear. Well, they came in, they complained of this, and I figured out it was that. Oh, by the process of deduction. No, it was by the process of the parallel processing of inductive and deductive reasoning that's impossible to map out. Now, you asked about an octopus. So we've seen, I assume a lot of people have seen these videos of an octopus opening a jar with a food source inside and say, wow, look at that intelligence, and so on and so forth. Yes, and octopuses are very intelligent. But to think that one octopus solves that the way a different octopus does is, I think, silly. In the same way that one physician arriving at a correct diagnosis, a differential diagnosis, their thought processes may actually follow very, very different paths. So to me, I like to think. I like to think. I enjoy thinking.
Hmm.
But I realize that I don't have a clue what that really means.
I love that. I remember when I was in the hospital and I had a brain infection, severe. I was almost in a coma and it was really bad. And I was first in a hospital in Belgium, then went to a hospital in the Netherlands. I had difficulty in figuring out what it was. There was later on I watched a movie on Netflix. It's called Brain on Fire, and I didn't read about the movie before I watched it. It was just like, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to watch that. And then during the movie, I was like, this is exactly the same thing that happened to me. What the hell? And it was about a brain infection and the diagnosis that was so difficult. But when I came into the Netherlands, this neurologist with this huge ego, Victor, came in, and he was like in this whole following behind him with all the med students and whatnot. He came in, and I remember this so well. I was already more awake. It was a week later since I arrived in the hospital. And he said to me, you have a brain infection. I can't prove it. We can't show it, but I know it's there. And we're going to treat it that way. And that's all I can say to you. And and I know I'm right. That's what he said. I know I'm right. I'm positive. But don't ask me anything else because I can't show you anything. I can't prove anything. But I know this is what's happening. It's fascinating. Neurologist saying, my gut feeling, this is it, Perry, basically. And a lot of experience, of course.
Well, yes, because the experience there is a huge part of the knowledge base that's drawn from. It's not just what you read in textbooks and hear in lectures and so on and so forth. It's what you've experienced. Even with the person with the sore throat, it's such a mundane example, and yet if I know, for instance, that this person is a hypochondriac, well, then I hear that complaint differently than someone who is, very stoic. And if they come in and tell me they have, I say, well, this must be a really bad sore throat for this person to come in. And that's just experience and knowledge about that particular person and cultural things. And all of these are going into this black box. And
Yeah.
so the fact that the neurologist said, I don't know how I know it, but I know it. That's just honesty, and that that is humility in my mind, not ego.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is. And talking with the Dr. Victor now, sorry, I love this. So I love to use the language nonlinear thinking. So the nonlinear thinking in a linear world, and you used it just now as well. Um, if someone asks me what is nonlinear thinking, I always say it's the space between thoughts. It's a vacuum. It's nothing, and therefore it is nonlinear, and it's the gut feeling. It's the connection. It's what is even happening right now, in my opinion. I'm looking at my screen of my laptop and I see you, but I hear you loud and clear, and I feel a connection. And for me, that's also nonlinear thinking processing. From a medical perspective, in how you see that from a linear angle, and then we dive into the love and the nonlinear angle. But how do you see How do you see nonlinear thinking as a medical specialist?
Well, I actually don't kind of separate it as a medical specialist. I just kind of say, and I'm no, I'm no longer in medicine. I've been retired out of that for 10 years. But I like to think I'm using the same constructs to understand the world, not just in the capacity as a doctor, but just as a human being. And so here's a metaphor. Here's a metaphor. It's a gaming metaphor. Pong is very linear. If you played that on a video, you're moving the paddle, you're trying to intersect the ball on
Oh,
the
it's that thing that
screen.
goes up and
Oh,
down, or
pong,
yeah,
pong,
yeah,
yes. And
yeah.
then, it's a predictable sort
Hmm.
of angle and vector, and it's very, very sequential and linear.
Hmm.
You hit the ball over here, it goes to the other paddle, you hit it over here, you go up, you go down. Okay. Nonlinear thinking is like a pinball machine with about, a dozen balls in there simultaneously, and you're operating the levers, making these balls do things, and they're pinging around, hitting one another. It's completely chaotic and unpredictable. And then, boom, a score pops out. But it's not just the machine. It's you operating the machine. Are you tired? Did you have a good night's sleep? Are you angry at this moment? What's going on? Is somebody watching you? So it's all this dynamic, crazy system, and it's all happening, as I said, in parallel processing. I wrote another word down here. I'm just looking for it because, um, yes, and synergistic integration. That was the word.
Wow.
And to me, it is not really fair to even just separate out nonlinear thinking, because it's happening with linear thinking all the time. It's like, is the octopus opening the jar saying, "Well, I'm only going to pay attention to one leg, one tentacle rather"? No, it's got to use all the feedback in a synergistic way, and that, I think, is what we sometimes lose sight of when we want to categorize linear and nonlinear. But it's one brain, and it's one body with a gut and a heart, and so all of this is synergistic, and I think that's sort of a holistic view. And Western medicine is very reductionistic. So you have this dialect, this Hegelian dialectic of holism and reductionism. Well, what's the synthesis of that? The
Yeah.
synthesis is to say, yes, they're both true. We can hold both. We can hold space for being linear and nonlinear at the same time.
Absolutely.
And because I think it's a reflection of every human being. Every human being is linear and nonlinear to an extent. I worked with the developmentally disabled for 9 years, adults with developmental disabilities. And
Hmm.
you know what I learned? We're all disabled.
Yeah.
It's just completely arbitrary where you put that label. Totally arbitrary.
It is. It is. And when people ask me in interviews and they say, well, who is a nonlinear thinker? I always answer the same. We all are. We're all are nonlinear thinkers. We're human. It's human intelligence, and it's so fascinating to talk about it. It's so cool to have a conscious mind about the pinball machine with dozens of balls flying everywhere, because we're so focused, I think, on conditioning the mind in that linear part. So we're doing a very good job there. Let's also look at the other side. And you've written so many beautiful articles and books. I hope everybody will um, dive into your work, Victor, and buy your books and read online. They can read a lot from you online. I've saw 9 ways to cultivate unconditional love in daily life, and I wanted to use these 9 as long as we we still have in this podcast to talk about that. Um, let me. I can read all nine, but people should read about this. I so agree with you with the nine ways to cultivate love in life. Um, if if you could make sure that one of the nine ways is taught up of all schools and all upbringing, and everybody knows that one so well, if you can bring one into the world that nobody will miss, which one is it? Shall I read all nine
Why don't you read all nine, and then
and you can think?
I already have one in mind, but I have that for a specific reason. But yeah, just read all
Yes,
nine, or I
yes.
can read them. But
No, I will
I'll
read
have
them.
you do it.
And then we have the Dutch accent reading. Radical and active acceptance. You know, accept people who they are. I always I always want to say for fuck's sake immediately. Jesus, people. Okay. Non-judgmental presence. Compassion. Compassion cracks open the heart when we truly acknowledge another's pain. I saw that somewhere as well with compassion. We all have our pain. So why add more pain to it when you're angry with someone for unreason? It's hmm, selfless, selfless action. That's huge. We did a think tank in the Octopus movement about giving, and I think most people give, even if they are aware of it or not, that they always give something with an expectation. Always, I think. Most people do that. It for me that's a huge one. Empathetic understanding. Before judging, pause, try to see the world through another's eyes. Forgiveness as practice, please, right? Service, offer your time, your skill, and your presence. But that's a difficult one if you're always expecting something. Maybe in return, maybe not in return, but there is another expectation there to be seen or whatever. Generosity, give from the heart and say, I love you, Victor. Say, I love you, not just to the closest to you, but silently to strangers without saying it out loud. You see someone, you can say, I love you.
Yeah.
I love all these nine ways to bring in love into our daily life. What is your favorite?
Well, I want to just frame that as these are ways to demonstrate unconditional love, because a lot of, when you said transaction, we give with the expectation of receiving. That's a transaction. Um, and a lot of the ways that we talk about love are in terms of conditions. Um, these are ways of being unconditionally loving. And my favorite one that I want to call attention to, I think, is forgiveness, because forgiveness as an expression of love means, um, you know, being willing to let go of a hurt, a transgression, an
Mhm.
injustice of some sort, and not continue to carry that energy with you. It doesn't mean that you have to repair that relationship. It doesn't mean that you have to wait for someone to ask for an apology. And one of the things about forgiveness is, if we examine our own conduct and behavior, we'll realize that, hey, there's sometimes I haven't been my best self. So we have so much opportunity to practice forgiveness on ourselves as an expression of self love, because in many respects, you can't give what you don't have. If you don't have love for yourself, um, that's the place to start, and not in a selfish way, but love is transformative. And so the personal growth and transformation, probably the most potent way of doing that is to work on being more loving. And a good
Yeah,
place to start is with yourself.
yeah. So how do you love yourself when you mess up things? when you see the results around you and you consider it as not enough or unpurposely hurting other people. Now what?
Well, I encourage um, us to be very cautious in applying judgments. Judgments are predicated on belief systems, and um, when we make a judgment that involves character, behavior that underlies some character attribute, it's not like, oh, it's raining outside. I've made a judgment I should carry an umbrella. But someone cuts you off while you're driving and you say what an asshole that person is. That's a character judgment. And
Hmm.
you know so when we put judgment on ourselves, I think it's healthy because we're critically evaluating, but not that makes us conclude that we're not worthy of being loved.
Yeah.
A child learning to ride a bicycle falls off. You don't say that's that's a failure. That's part of the learning process. And in many
And
ways,
Victor, and
we're,
and do
we're
you,
all we're all we're all on a process of self-discovery and learning to love ourselves better. And that includes we're gonna screw up.
yeah. So is do you think when you're more your authentic self, meaning when you understand yourself better, is it then easier to love? I think so, but what do you think?
Well, it's interesting because you use the word authentic self,
Hmm.
and we really have two um, types of self-identity. One is, and you told the story about all the things that I've done when you introduced me. That's a story about me. That's probably an ego identity that I have. I'm a doctor. I'm a writer. Okay, blah 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 blah. But
Award-winning writer,
there
Victor.
you go. But the divine aspect of myself, I like to say I'm infinity in a confined space, and so are you, and so is anybody that's listening. Um, and when you say, okay, I I am a package deal. I'm my human self and my divine self, incarnated in this body simultaneously. So when you have that perspective, your true authentic self, at sometimes you're more authentically human, at sometimes you're more authentically divine. But
Mhm.
whatever you do, if I'm a jerk today, I'm being my authentic self. It's not my best self. um, so I think the more you are able to see the divinity within yourself and appreciate that type of authenticity, absolutely the easier it is to love yourself. And in a
And to
sense,
love someone else.
and it's exactly what I was going to say,
Yeah.
and to love other people, because if you believe in unity consciousness, and that's something that is my belief system, then we're all the same consciousness. We're all mirror expressions of that consciousness in unique way. And as we were chatting before the interview, we're all different facets on the same diamond. And so when you have that perspective, if you're able to love yourself as a facet of that diamond, how could you not love another facet of the diamond that's just reflecting something a little bit differently than you are? And the beauty is we have the chance to exchange our perspectives and our experiences in a loving exchange that says, hey, wow, thank you for sharing that. I receive that with the love that it sent to me, because I think in some respects we all want to love and be loved. I think that's a universal human desire, to love and be loved.
Absolutely. And I think what you trigger with me, Victor, is that a relationship. a romantic relationship, but also relationship with others, is a diamond by itself with different facets in the relationship as well. So we all together, the human mycelium is one big diamond with all the different facets. But I think in also in the relationship, how we see each other, if we can see it that way, that creates so much more beauty in love and to be
Well,
with each other, I
it
think.
it does, and the potential for the human mycelial network as a distributed network of love energy. The mycelium in a forest creates the substrate that allows the forest to flourish. It's the wood wide web.
Yep.
The wood wide web provides the conditions for the forest to flourish. The human mycelium, as the support for human flourishing, really is creating the environment of love that allows humanity to flourish. And I think that that's a fantastic thing that the octopus movement, um, is working to facilitate.
Thank you, Victor. And we run out of time. We could do this so much longer. I think we should do it part two. Uh, let's organize that immediately. Um, we're out of time, but I have one question that I still want to ask you, and we talked about it in our preparation because I love that question. If you could whisper one sentence into someone's ear, and then all the people all over the world will hear that sentence in their own language, what what sentence or what kind of sentence or what kind of message would that be for you?
Well, it's a little bit longer than a sentence, but
Okay,
it is
go for
what
it. We're
I
out of
love.
time anyway. Go for it.
I love to share this
Okay.
um, as a reminder to myself. Be filled with love. Let it overflow. You are a fountainhead of love. Do nothing to restrain this, to hold it back. Do not try and parcel out your love. Can you contain the air, the oceans? Why would you want to try? So let it be with your love at all times, under all circumstances. Love with the fullness of your being, because that's who you are in the essence of your being, a creature of love. You're happiest when you are the most loving, because at those moments you give expression to your being. Express yourself more fully. Love you.
Let's
All
let's
of you.
whisper that in everybody's ear together,
That's
Victor.
it.
That would be so cool. Thank you so much, not just for being here in the podcast, but also in the movement as a founding member. Thank you. If you're listening and you feel a spark, please follow it. If you can feel that love, nonlinear thinking is not a strategy, it is a kind of love, and it grows where we share it. Thank you, Victor. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Perry.